another pastor joining us on the program. Well, he's sort of a pastor. He's also our Australian correspondent, Dr. Craig Heilmann. Sorry for calling sort of a pastor, but I hate to use the word transition because it's taken on other connotations, but you're a transitioning pastor. Would that be?
I'm a transitioning pastor, transitioning between Australia and New Zealand, and many other transitions going on as well.
Just be careful with the pronouns on that one. But talking about some things happening in Australia, and starting off with education, actually, and the removal of Section 38, what this means particularly for faith-based schools. What's the story there, Craig?
Yeah, so look, Christian schools are getting quite upset at the moment because the government has said, look, we're going to pass some legislation to deal with discrimination in schools. And this really has to do with the Sexual Discrimination Act. Section 38 protects religious groups. It says you can discriminate in certain contexts, particularly if you're protecting the ethos of your school, if you're trying to hire a teacher who you don't think fits the ethos of your school because you're Christian, you're Muslim, whatever, you're protected. What the government is proposing is to remove that section. That's been proposed by the Law Society, and that's upsetting people because they're not sure what it will be replaced by. And I think that there is a real issue here, which is, look, surely Christian schools or Muslim schools have a right to have their own special character.
Mm-hmm. The issue here with Section 38, I mean, this is sort of an exemption.
Yep.
The result of this proposed change, will that mean that Christian schools, Muslim schools won't be able to say, you can't be a teacher or a staff member at this school because of your sexuality or even your gender?
Yep. So any of those issues that you wouldn't be able to discriminate any longer to say, oh, we don't agree with your lifestyle, therefore you can't be a maths teacher. What the argument is from the Law Society is, look, if they're teaching religion, that's one thing. If they're teaching mathematics, it shouldn't matter. But I think that just doesn't actually stack up, because there must be a Christian way to teach mathematics. There must be a Christian way to teach history. There must be a Christian way to look at poetics or whatever, English language. These are not just, you can't separate education from what people are and who they are and the core of their beliefs. We don't do it, interestingly enough, when someone is gay or lesbian or whatever. So I don't think we should do it when people say they're Christians or Muslims or Jews or whatever they are. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, it's kind of reverse discrimination in that regard. Also wondering how people would feel, for example, if you make the decision to send your daughter to an all-girls Catholic school and the school can't make decisions based on gender in terms of the sort of staff that they need.
That's right.
It just gets a bit complex, doesn't it?
It does. It's a mess, and it just doesn't respect the fact that some of these issues around human sexuality go deeper than just cosmetic. I mean, for some cultures, Islamic, Christian, whatever, they're deeper than that. They go right to the heart of what they perceive human beings to be, and therefore they're integral to the education. So it's not just enough to say, well, they're in the maths classroom, it won't hurt. That really won't pass muster, I don't think. So this is going to be a bun fight. The government has insisted it has to be a bipartisan issue, but that's just trying to I think that's just trying to say, hey, welcome to my nightmare. Come on in, the water's warm. I think the other party doesn't want a bar of it, right?
Well, I mean, that could also be said of the current immigration status of Australia as well. Come on in, the water's warm. And a lot of people think so. A lot of people are arriving officially or unofficially into Australia. Similar problems here in New Zealand, but hey, if the infrastructure is not keeping up with the immigration, you're gonna hit some problems pretty quickly.
We already have those problems. I mean, I drove through the traffic yesterday from Sunshine Coast to Brisbane at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it was a snarl.
Yeah,
it's horrible, and we're having this problem all over Australia now. And basically, the story is that 5 full plane loads, and Boeing 747s are arriving of permanent immigrants every day in Australia. 5 full plane loads. Boeing 747. I mean, I'm surprised given their Boeings, they're actually landing safely, but they are, despite parts falling off, etc. So there's a lot of people being added. What we're not adding, we're in a housing crisis here too. So what we're not adding is houses. We're adding people, but not houses. And so there is a whole crisis brewing. This is, by the way, how the government is keeping its economic numbers up. We're going to talk about that in a second. But one of the ways they're doing it is just by letting millions of people in.
I think
it's demand.
It's similar here, actually, because we don't have the people to do the jobs. And honestly, don't want you to start a fight, but some of those plane loads of people coming into Australia are Kiwi-trained nurses. and
Yeah, that's
Kiwi
true.
trained policemen, etc. So, so you're
Yeah.
solving your unemployment problem in key areas, but you've got to have houses for these people to live in. You've got to have roads and schools and all of those sorts of things as well. You've got to get that in the right order, right?
That's it, mate. I mean, we are robbing New Zealand. I mean, this is how we love our neighbour, mate. We steal from our neighbour. We take their best and their brightest. Yeah, that's exactly right. We don't have what we need to be able to pull this off, and so the government's just creating such a mess for the whole society really to pick up. We just don't create infrastructure quick enough. We don't build houses quick enough. It's not going to work. So there's a lot of pain at the moment, and people are pretty upset.
And hey, this is different than the other immigration problem with people unofficially arriving into the country. This is like, come on in. We need as many as possible. Let's fill these planes. Let's keep them coming in. You mentioned economics, and some sort of good news from for Australia in terms of economics, unemployment rates and interest rates. I mean, these are causally linked, of course.
Yeah, they are. And look, this is a pick your poison story, Andrew, if you like. I mean, you could be like New Zealand in a sort of a double dip recession with unemployment going up, but that means interest rates are going to come down. So if you've got a mortgage and you've got a job, you're probably going to do fine. It's not great if you lose your job. In Australia, it's the other way, where, we've got too much, we've got too much. Well, sorry, what's the word? We've got not enough unemployment. We've got unemployment rate has dropped from 4.1% to 3.7%.
It's because there's a plane loads of people coming into the country. Of course, you haven't got much
plane
unemployment.
Loads of people coming into the country at the same time. But apparently, you can find a job in Australia. What you can't do is find a house. So all that money in your pocket's going into the backseat of your car, probably. You can't find a house, but you can find a job. But the problem with that, of course, is it means that our interest rates are going to stay up higher and longer. So New Zealand, you're going to have falling interest rates. Australia's going to be up higher and longer. But by the way, what does that mean? If you've got Kiwi dollars, you better trade them now.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of coming to Australia, that's I'm not
traveling to Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
For that handful of my listeners that aren't planning on travelling to the Gold Coast to live permanently in the next wee while, at least change your currency in that regard. Now, this next story, I don't know where to start on this one. The Brisbane Olympics. I wondered because, I mean, there was this debacle. I'm not sure whether we'll have another Commonwealth Games. Thanks, Victoria. That the plug was pulled on that one. And yes, these are difficult economic times, and it's very expensive to put on a big international sporting event like this. The Gold Coast did one recently, but for the Brisbane Olympics, question marks, or is it literally dead in the water and floating face down in the pool?
It's not dead in the water. It will go ahead. They were thinking, this is the irony, they were thinking of giving it away. They were thinking of chucking the towel in terms of Brisbane, which is insane. After bidding for this thing and getting your city set up for it. So what it now has become is they're not going to build the kinds of infrastructure they should have been building. We're probably going to redo the Gabba, the old cricket ground. We're going to redo a couple of old parks, dog tracks, whatever we have to do to make it work. It's going to be a real embarrassment in terms of the possibility that they had for upgrading infrastructure. And they've had years to think about it. They've had 3 years to prepare. I mean, we're still, 8-9 years away from the Olympics, and they can't get their act together, and they're still debating whether they're going to do the Olympics. They were talking about possibly, one of our great swimmers, Tracy Wickham, said, give it to Sydney. They will pull it off. It's a real disgrace to Brisbane. It's an embarrassment to the government. But it just shows you, mate, even in a place where everybody can get a job, like Australia currently, the shame is that sometimes the wrong people get those jobs.
Exactly.
And the wrong people have the jobs.
You're talking politicians and people who organise these types of things.
Some very talentless people have those jobs right now, and they're doing a really lousy job.
And hey, it's again interesting that it's about infrastructure and I suppose planning for something which is longer than an electoral cycle. That you've got to plan for something that maybe you won't be in government to see the fulfillment of, and certainly looks like it's tracking that way at the moment. Having that vision that goes beyond your self-interest, as it were.
That's right. And if you've been squandering money on other things you probably shouldn't have been squandering it on, then the Olympics begins to look like another boondoggle as well, which it probably will be if it's the Labor government, because it's the unions and it's buildings and it's all the rest of it. So in some sense, they probably think this might be a vote winner for them, but I think it's a disaster. I think it's just more egg on the face for the government. They're already in crisis over youth crime in Queensland.
Yeah.
It's just another disaster.
But hey, maybe we can send another plane load of Kiwi chippies your way to help turn the Greyhound track into your athletic stadium or whatever the latest plan is.
I'm expecting to see you on one of those 5 Boeings. Get your money changed over now.
Craig, always a pleasure to chat. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Bless you, Andrew. Take care, mate. Bye.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.